Won't it stay connected?
Printer's offline.
See you tomorrow.
Please welcome HPE Executive Vice President and General Manager, Intelligent Edge and HPE Aruba Networking, Phil Mottram.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Atmosphere 2024. It's a bit of a downgrade, isn't it, from the Sphere? I think the only thing I need is an overhead projector, a marker board, and some marker pens. But other than that, I'm sure we'll be all right. So as with all things in life, some things change and some things stay the same. In the last year, you've heard a lot of talk about AI, and I also hope that you saw Antonio on the stage this morning talking about the importance of networking in the future of IT. So what has changed? Well, obviously, the big thing that you'll notice this year is that we've brought Atmosphere together with HPE Discover. And we thought that made a lot of sense because we wanted you, the networking audience, to understand a bit more about the broader HPE portfolio, and in particular, what we're doing in AI. But we also wanted the broader Discover audience to understand what we're doing here in networking. But let's talk about what hasn't changed. And hopefully, it's all the things that you love about HPE Aruba Networking. Our customer-first, customer-last mindset, our drive to lead and innovate, and our fantastic Airheads community, and a lot of people are here in this room. The Airheads are really important to us as a company for all the feedback, collaboration, and support that they provide. And the community has over 210,000 Airhead members now, and I'm pleased to say that we have 2,500 of them in the room here today. I also would like to recognize some of our Airhead MVPs, so the most valuable players. We have 8 listed here on the screen, and these are the individuals who've made the biggest contribution to the Airhead community. So I want to give them a big round of applause. Well done, all of you. We really appreciate what you do for the community. So networking is an ever-changing space. And we talked about change there, with Atmosphere now being part of Discover. But I think there's a lot more than that. I personally believe that we are in the change business. And the reason I think that is because whenever anything big happens in the world, there's always an impact on the network. So in 2007, we saw the launch of the smartphone. And obviously since then, we've seen 2G, 3G, 4G, and now 5G. But also think about the impact that the smartphone has had on the demand and growth of Wi-Fi networks. Think about online shopping. As perfectly demonstrated by myself, you can buy clothes from the comfort of your own armchair, but clearly you cannot buy style or taste. We've also seen the evolution from the desktop PC through to laptops and then through to tablets. And again, I encourage you to think about how much of an impact that's had on the networks, and in particular, around Wi-Fi networks. One of the biggest changes in the world was definitely hybrid work. So before COVID, I used to go into the office every day and then come home and have dinner with my happy wife. Then COVID hit, and 3 things changed. The first thing is, I stopped going into the office. Second thing is, she stopped being happy. And then the third thing is, she stopped being my wife. And I think personally, this is one of the bigger and more important and also expensive changes that I've experienced in my life. Also think about smart cities and where they're going to go next. In the future, will they be able to coordinate the collection of the dustbins in your city? I mean, one thing is clear, you will not want rubbish reception. They get a lot worse, by the way. Autonomous vehicles as well, be with us soon. And I heard that Dyson are producing one for launch in 2026. But I've also heard that it really sucks. But back to a more serious note, the era of AI will be the next defining change for the network. And in order to capture the full potential of AI, not only will organizations need to change their networks, but the network industry will also have to change. That is why we, HPE, have decided to acquire Juniper Networks, because we want to change the networking market. We believe customers need strong players who have a comprehensive network portfolio, who can deliver a secure edge-to-cloud network that's fit for the AI world. For the last 20 years, the industry has been dominated by one large player who are based in San Francisco. But we believe it is time now to give customers more choice. We at Aruba have been gaining a lot of market share, and Juniper has been doing the same. Our planned acquisition of Juniper will change the dynamics of the industry. We will introduce a new market leader with an unmatched portfolio and a customer-centric approach. Think about ease of management, ease of deployment, and all this with simple, seamless infrastructure. This deal also shows our commitment and investment in networking. We believe the deal will complete at the end of this calendar year or the early part of the following calendar year, and it will build on the current success of HPE Aruba Networking. Think about our current engineering team and then adding thousands of engineers from Juniper. This will give HPE an amazing capability to build the next generation of networking products. We want to deliver more innovation and faster. If you think about networks of the past, the good ones were reliable and stable. But that's no longer enough. Here at Aruba, we're delivering security first AI-powered networking from the edge to the cloud that is simple and easy for customers to manage. And as you heard in the Sphere from Antonio this morning, 94% of IT leaders are saying that AI has increased their enterprise security risks. The era of AI represents new opportunities, and the role of the network is huge. AI workloads are very network intensive. You're entirely dependent on being able to reliably capture and transmit data in order to train models and generate insights. If you think about it, the quality of the AI decision is directly connected to the quality of the data that's in the model. And let's not forget, it's the network that gets the data into the model. AI models need high-speed, lossless networking, and it needs to be secure. If you think about the amount of data in these models, any leaks could be catastrophic to a company. We're enabling customers to optimize their networks and embrace AI. We deliver not only network that supports AI, as in infrastructure for you to build AI solutions, but we also deliver AI that supports networking. And what I mean by that is we infuse AI into Aruba Central to help you more effectively manage and secure your network. Networking for AI means ubiquitous coverage, universal connectivity, high throughput capacity, and low latency, even in complex networking environments. So what I want to do now is I would like to invite on stage one of our customers to talk a bit about their complex networking environment and the possibilities of AI. So please join me in welcoming on stage Teddy Bekele of Land O'Lakes. Hello, mate. So welcome, Teddy. What people don't know is you've got a really important member of your team in the audience, and he is your...
He's my son. He's my 11-year-old son, and a very important member of our team.
Where is TJ? We probably shouldn't embarrass him.
Oh, he's right
hello,
there.
TJ.
There he is.
I met him yesterday. He's a great kid, but he's a Manchester City fan. Anyway,
what are we going to do about that?
So, Teddy, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about what your role and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Teddy Bekele. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Land O'Lakes. I've been with the organization for about 11 years, and I've been in this role for almost 6 years. So Land O'Lakes is a farmer-owned, farm-to-fork cooperative. Got it? We'll get back to that whole concept of what the whole thing is. So we are Fortune 243 on the list, about $17 billion in revenue, which, by the way, oscillates from 190 to 243 depending on commodity prices. So really interesting organization. And we actually have 4 main lines of business. So we start with Winfield United, which most of you don't know, but it's our largest division. It's a crop inputs business. So we buy seed, crop protection, and plant nutrition products. We buy them from basic manufacturers like Bayer and BASF, and then we sell that to our members who are ag retailers and row crop farmers. And so they take those products. So just to kind of understand the size and reach, we work with about 800 or so retailers in rural communities, and they touch about half of the harvested acres in the United States. The other business is our animal nutrition business. Most people know it by Purina. I think most of you know who Purina is, not the dog and cat. So it's everything but dog and cat. So think horses, chicken, cattle, all the feed for that. We make feed for those animals. We have large facilities where we bring in corn and soybeans, which, by the way, are the outputs of our first business. So in our first business, we're helping row crop farmers grow corn, soybeans, wheat, canola. That is a major input, a raw ingredient input into meeting feed formulations for these animals. The #1 species we serve is our, and we said, by the way, we feed about 100 million animals per day. And then the number one species is our dairy cows. And most people know Land O'Lakes for the dairy business. So we have about 1,600 dairy producers. They purchase those products, feed their animals, and then they produce about 13 billion pounds of milk that gets to the store. And then you guys know it for either fluid milk, butter, and cheese, obviously. And there's some other derivatives which we'll talk about in a second. And then our final and fourth business is our Truterra business, which is a sustainability business. And it's looking at that value chain from farm all the way to fork, as we talked about, and looking at sustainability practices in our business, as well as sustainability practices in each individual business. So that's a really interesting one where we're helping these row crop farmers optimize their operations. And so it's been a really interesting business and really fun to go on the ride of transforming agriculture and how we consume food these days.
That's fascinating. So networks are becoming the foundation of the IT estate, and due to the value of securely connecting and transmitting data. But what does this mean for Land O'Lakes?
Yeah, you know, I think I put it into two main categories. I'll talk about internal operations optimization, and then predictive AI, which is, you mentioned quite a bit of that here in the opening. The internal operations, we're talking about products moving from our example, dairy producers, to all the way gets to the store. It's our manufacturing operations. How do we make sure that we keep up with the maintenance of the equipment or the quality of the product and all that testing that we do to make sure we bring nutritious food to your table every single day. So we have all that work that happens there. And just to give you an example of what that complexity might look like, these 1,600 dairy producers are all over the map, all over the United States, and they all have anywhere between 95 to 5,000 cows. A lot of them have sensors on those cows, so talk about edge computing. They monitor the movement of those cows. Depending on the movement, we can tell the health of the animal. Then they also can they have sensors on the robotic milkers when the cows come into the milking parlor. And then from that, we can extract the protein and fat content of that milk, which, by the way, is super important to meet certain thresholds, because at the end of the day, that's what we want to bring to the store. Like I talked about earlier, some derivative of milk, as an example, is non-fat dry milk. So you take the milk, you separate the cream from the protein, and what's left is just water and protein. You evaporate the water, and what's called non-fat dry milk. Now, why would you ever care about this? Well, with infusion of cheese flavoring, that's what gets dusted on Cheetos. So all of you that eat Cheetos and you lick your fingers at the end of the day, well, we better make sure that we have the right quality that gets there, and that's what PepsiCo and Frito-Lay expect from us. So that's a simple example of like our normal operations. In the predictive and AI space, obviously, that's very exciting. Some of these row crop farmers are using remote sensing technologies. They're using weather stations on the ground, and they're making every single day decisions. So, for example, when the weather changes in southern Minnesota, and what we expect is going to be different than what we originally planned for, how do we make those quick changes? How do you make sure you put different type of seed or apply certain type of nutrients so it goes into the plant? Those are the decisions those farmers are making every day, and the opportunities are limitless in that predictive AI space.
Wow, I didn't know cows had sensors, but Cheetos are a big part of my life anyway. You talked about using data to make informed decisions that support more efficient operations, but I know being more sustainable is important to you as well. What kind of sustainability outcomes are top of mind for Land O'Lakes?
Yeah, and when we talk about sustainability, most of you would think environmental sustainability, and that's a big one. For us, there's three categories of sustainability. First and foremost, financial sustainability. Every farmer is betting the farm every single day. That's not just a saying, it's really true, whether you're a dairy producer or a row crop farmer. So at the end of the day, you're making some big bets, and you want to make sure that at the end of the day, whatever decisions you make, you end up in a really good space, right? So financial sustainability is paramount and foundational. The second one is environmental sustainability. How do you put practices into place that are good for the environment? And don't kid yourself. I mean, like farmers, this is their land. They're all generational farmers, and they want to leave the land in better conditions than they received it. So which means they care more about the topsoil and no runoff off the field and the nutrients going into the plant more than anybody else. But what are those practices? And again, how do I still stay financially sustainable? And then the third sustainability one, I would say, is community sustainability. And that's really around the community being vibrant. How many of you farm? I think one or two hands go up. A really interesting business, but you're probably doing it as a side hobby. The ones that are doing it every single day, It's less than 1% of the population. And so they want their communities to be vibrant. They want their communities to thrive. And without network, and without connectivity, and without being able to use some of these new devices and these new technologies that we're putting in place, they're going to have to close up shop soon. And those rural communities are decaying little by little. So with better networking and better connectivity, we can really revive those communities, and that's a big aspect of who we are as a cooperative.
Yeah, that's amazing. And what kind of opportunities do you see for the future around the use of AI applications to improve operations for Land O'Lakes?
Yeah, so the number one thing is I would love to get broadband for everybody, right? I mean, that's paramount, having connected those rural communities connected. And why do we even care so much? Like I said, 1% of the population feeds the entire country. Well, if you think about it, that's where all our food, majority of our food comes from. So now networking and connectivity is actually paramount to food security, and food security is a matter of national security. But it's not just food. When you think about fiber, fuel, and feed for the animals, all those are coming from row crop agriculture and all these dairy operations. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that those are vibrant and thriving. And this was very evident during COVID, where like all of a sudden you couldn't even go to school anymore. You couldn't go to the doctor because it was 80 miles away, and you had to figure out how to do telehealth, and telehealth wasn't available. So for the future, we need to make sure these communities are connected, and we bridge that urban-rural divide. That's a paramount thing that we all should be thinking about. That's where our near future is. Now, once we do that, this is where it gets exciting. You talk about driverless cars. Driverless tractors are a lot of fun. Having automated tractors that could even drive in the middle of the night and do the work, that's how you kind of get more productivity out of the fields. How do you make sure that we can grow all sorts of like our crops today, our corn, soybeans, and those are like 95% of the crops. How can we get more lentils and peas? Where can we grow them? In what kind of environment? This is where predictive AI comes into place. What soil makes more sense with what nutrients for this crop? How do we go deeper on precision farming, which then turns into precision nutrition? Let's look at the DNA of each one of you, and how do we make sure that we feed you exactly what your body needs? And that is where it's going to be exciting, and where farming and food are going into the future.
Well, that's a fascinating story. I hope you all enjoyed hearing that. And I just want to say a big thank you for Teddy for being a customer of ours and coming on stage today to share his story. So thanks very much, Teddy.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And TJ can be proud. His dad did a great job there. Anyway, as you heard from Teddy, the possibilities are endless for AI to improve operations, but you must have the right infrastructure, and you must be able to support multiple types of endpoints, high-speed data transmission, large throughput capacity with complete network coverage. When building AI networks, IoT devices can be a great way to generate insights via the network. IoT-sourced data can do things like predictive maintenance, it can generate digital twins, and it can also deliver personalized customer user experiences. But you must have the network to be able to handle it. HPE Aruba Networking provides a secure connectivity platform for the increase in IoT devices such as cameras, motor sensors, energy sensors, and motion detectors. Security, though, is also key for IoT because many IoT devices are actually quite old devices. And to make the situation even more complex, many of them are also connecting through to the internet, so therefore that's increasing the levels of vulnerability. What we've done is we've embedded technology in Aruba Central that can look out for strange behaviors on these devices and flag them to network managers and users. I want to spend a little bit of time now just talking about a recent launch that we made around Wi-Fi 7 and why our new 730 series access points have features and functionality that no one else in the market has. The first unique feature is something that we call ultra tri-band, and that allows the network to use all 3 bands, so 2.4, 5, and 6 gigahertz, to provide more density to more users and more bandwidth per user. The second unique point that we have in the 730 is we've added a barometric sensor that allows you to detect where the AP is in terms of which floor it's on in the building. So if you remember last year, we talked about how we'd added some location capability, but now I've added barometric sensors that allow you to pinpoint which floor the AP is on. We've also added twice the memory into the access points to allow you to run more third-party applications. And then also, just to make sure that the whole environment is more secure, we've added new MACsec encryption capabilities between the AP and the switch. We've actually got Wi-Fi 7 access points outside powering the showcase area of HPE Discover. We've always viewed Wi-Fi more broadly than just a way to wirelessly connect users to IT infrastructure. And so for 18 consecutive occasions, we have been identified as a leader in the Gartner Wired and Wireless Magic Quadrant. Supporting capacity and IoT is important, but so is comprehensive network coverage for data capture. This is where private 5G plays a role. We believe private 5G will live alongside Wi-Fi for certain use cases. So if you think about where you have rapidly moving devices, such as IoT and robotics, maybe in healthcare, warehousing, or industrial settings, those use cases are perfectly suited for private 5G. Also, if you have use cases with very large outdoor areas, like ports, airports, or smart cities, again, these are perfect use cases for private 5G. And last but not least would be where you have challenging radio environments. So think about manufacturing facilities with hard-to-reach pockets of airspace. Again, these scenarios are perfect for private 5G. Manufacturing is a great use case, actually. Teddy talked about it today. 70% of manufacturers say they've implemented some form of AI into their operations. 82% have plans to increase their AI budgets in 2024, but only 37% of manufacturers were confident in the data underpinning their AI initiatives. So basically, if we've got complete coverage to get more complete data, it will allow manufacturers to be more confident in the data that's feeding their AI models. Historically, private 5G solutions have been riddled with complexity. But what we've done at HPE Aruba Networking since we bought Athonet over a year ago is we've become the first and only infrastructure vendor to announce a comprehensive Wi-Fi and private 5G solution. We're making private 5G as easy to deploy and manage as Wi-Fi. So we've removed the complexity and delivering it as part of an integrated solution with a unified management dashboard, and that opens up, we believe, way more use cases and possibilities for customers. So regardless of whether you have P5G now, or maybe you're considering it in the future, it's really important to many organizations to have great network coverage. And so to talk more about the importance of ubiquitous coverage and how to deploy it, I'd like to welcome on stage another customer of ours, who's Dr. Rita Barantes of the University of Houston. So please join me in welcoming Rita.
Hi, Phil.
Hello. How you doing? Proceed, please. So, welcome, Rita.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Thanks for joining us, by the way. So we know that educational environments are some of the most demanding environments from a network perspective. University of Houston is definitely in that category. So can you tell us and the audience about your network, please?
Yes, absolutely. We have a very complex network. We support about over 50,000 users. That is in between faculty, students, and staff. Each of them bring to our network, on average, 4 devices. So that means about 200,000 devices connected to our network.
Wow.
In terms of the University of Houston, we are very proud to be the second most diverse university, major research university in the United States. So we have probably students coming from over 120 different countries.
Oh, wow.
We have, in terms of infrastructure, building infrastructure, over 160 buildings in about 900 acres. And going back to a little bit about our diversity, I once taught a technology project management class that had 25 graduate students, which they spoke 23 different languages.
Oh, wow.
So I was very happy that they actually all understood my English.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's incredible. 160 buildings. Wow. Yeah, I would have never guessed that. So we started this session talking about the ever-changing landscape of networking, and I know that you've been on a journey over the last few years to evolve your Wi-Fi strategy, and social media played a big part in that. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Yes. We started our journey with Aruba Networks about 8 years ago.
Yep.
And the students were actually telling us through social media very loud and clear that they wanted their Wi-Fi experience to be improved. So basically, they wanted Wi-Fi to be like air, available everywhere, ubiquitous, and all the time.
Yeah.
So for us, that meant ubiquitous network, of course, but also a very highly reliable network. So that's what we did. We changed our strategy. We used to have actually only coverage in the main venues, like our libraries and our high-density spaces. We used to ask students, hey, you know, there's Wi-Fi available in the library, go there, or there's Wi-Fi available in the classrooms, use it there, don't use it here. But instead of doing that, you know, we said, well, you know, Wi-Fi should meet the students where they are.
Yeah.
So we should install Wi-Fi everywhere, 100%, and in indoors and outdoors as well. And that's what we did. We don't have unlimited budget. Probably most of you don't have unlimited budget either. So we created a space categorization strategy. And the first, basically based in 4 different space categories. High-density areas first, giving them priority to academic and research spaces, followed by residential, and then our administrative spaces. So we put together a roadmap, a 5-year roadmap, and replace we used to have over 3,000 access points from a previous manufacturer. Yep. We replaced all of that, and in 5 years, we more than doubled the number of access points. And we had a very good senior management support because they actually funded our key initiative that enabled us to do so in 5 years.
That's great. And how's it going? What feedback do you get from the students?
Well, the students are loving it.
Yeah?
Yes, yes. They have a Wi-Fi at capacity now, so basically that means at room capacity. Room capacity times 3 devices, that's actually what we plan to do the coverage for all of them. We're also doing outdoors, like I mentioned, in most areas. And the customer satisfaction improved tremendously. So in fact, we have 46,000 students, and last year we only had 7 student support tickets, so complaints.
7?
Just 7.
Oh, wow.
So
that's
the entire
nothing,
year.
That's amazing. Wow. So 46,000 people putting their own devices on your network, that's got to introduce some risks. So how are you managing the risk?
Yeah, absolutely. So all these students and our basically everybody in the university, we have a BYOD policy. So it does increase the risk. The first thing we did in order to manage the risk in our network is to put in place policies and procedures to connect devices in our network. Then we introduced ClearPass, basically to be able to manage the most critical infrastructure in our network. And then we also install CAPE sensors in most of our buildings to be able to do end-user testing, to be able to find issues, identify issues and risk in our network, to be able to resolve them on a timely manner, and be able to meet our 99.9% service availability for our students and our users.
Got it. And education institutions are kind of hubs of exploration and innovation. How are you innovating with your network?
Well, innovation is part of our core, is the core of our, basically of our institution, right? We support research, and I think the keynote today opened with a very bold statement like, all mankind desires knowledge, right? It has the desire that nature, by nature, the desire to know. And I think that's what actually innovation enables and AI enables to in our environment. So we're looking forward, for instance, to use more AI, not just in the research areas, because our researchers are doing a lot of AI right now, to be able to bring those AI-powered tools to the industry, but also, using it in administrative areas, like we use Copilot, ChatGPT, and things like that for our meetings. And also, University Academic Affairs is using AI-powered chatbot called Ocelot. Yeah. So we are looking forward to, in the fall, to be able to use Aruba Central, to be able to realize the benefits of cloud computing in our remote locations. Yeah. So that's basically what we are we're planning to do in the next few months.
And my final question was going to be about AI. You've touched on a few examples there. Anything else that you'd want to add about AI and where you're thinking about how that might impact the network?
Yes, I think that AI is actually going to increase the speed that high-performance networking has been enabled right now to become network connectivity like air, right? Yeah. So that has been the goal, I think, for many networking companies during the last few years, reliable, secure, and all of that. But I think that AI is going to actually help tremendously reduce that time frame that we ever thought that we were going to be able to make it. Especially not just in the US, but worldwide. Like I mentioned at the very beginning, we have students from 127 countries who like to be communicating with their families overseas, right? Yeah. And then also when they travel, they are able to receive their online learning. And so we need that infrastructure to be able to connect with those students wherever they are, worldwide.
Got it. Well, look, thank you very much for sharing your story with the audience. I like the networking is like air. That will stick in my mind. But yeah, great. Thanks again. And if everyone could give a big round of applause to Rita.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks very much. So as you heard from Rita, managing complex networks with multiple users and deployments that must all coexist efficiently is no small task. And that presents a real opportunity for streamlined management tools like Aruba Central and the kind of automation that AI tools can offer. We deliver AI for networking, which includes 24/7 automated insights, and that's around always-on monitoring and detection. We provide simple-to-use IT assistance with natural language search for faster troubleshooting. And we also have AI that easily spots an imposter, so real-time comparisons that automatically detect abnormal behavior on the network. Building our capabilities in our AI ops has taken a number of years, And we're privileged to have one of the largest data lakes in the industry. We have nearly 4 million network-managed devices, more than 1 billion unique customer endpoints, and that brings together for us 20 petabytes of data, and that's all powering Aruba Central's machine learning models for predictive analysis and recommendations. We continue to add and enhance our AI capabilities, and in particular around Gen AI for large language models, which we announced in March, and it's now generally available on Aruba Central. The training sets that we have in Aruba Central are up to 10 times more extensive than those of our closest competitors. And in terms of what we loaded into the platform, it was more than 10,000 documents and also 3 million questions that we thought customers would ask us. One example of how we're using AI is around power savings. So we have a power save feature within Aruba Central. And so if you think about, I don't know what your office is like on a Friday afternoon, but sometimes ours is pretty dead. And so what the platform can do is put some access points into a deep sleep mode rather than them sitting idle. And depending on the model of the access point, this can be up to an 80% reduction in power consumption per access point. And so if you apply that across a very large network, you can actually add up to having some significant energy savings. Cloud-based network management can be close to 4 times more energy efficient. And Aruba Central is obviously largely cloud-based management network platform. So to talk more about HPE Aruba Central and the automation and ease of management that it enables, I'd like to welcome on stage one last customer today, who is Neil Seacher of TD Bank. So welcome, Neil. Hey, Neil.
How you doing? Thank you.
So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no worries. Just a little intimate gathering. Yeah, so if you could tell us a bit more about yourself and TD Bank, that would be great.
Sure. So people from this part of the world might not know too much about TD Bank because we haven't made it here yet. But TD was started in Toronto in the mid-1800s. And we've been growing kind of steadily through organically and also through acquisition ever since. Over the last 10 to 15 years, we've really made our move into the United States. And so our retail network today goes from coast to coast in Canada and from Maine to Florida in the US. We also have been on the acquisition path in securities and trading industry. And so our securities network goes around the world. So. What I do on a daily basis when I'm not under the lights and on stage is I am an executive product owner within our infrastructure technology solutions team. My teams focus on infrastructure architecture, data centers, both physical data centers and co-location facilities, the networks, so our networks in campus and retail environments and in data centers themselves. And also infrastructure security. So anywhere where we're actually implementing a security control point in the infrastructure itself, my teams kind of look after that. And so those are things like DNS and firewalls and CDNs and all that kind of fun stuff. So I have a lot of the foundational services that, you know, if they go down, the bank's having a bad day.
Right. No pressure then.
No.
Now, you're actually on your 3rd iteration of SD-WAN, so you're obviously not new to this. What was some of the criteria you were looking for?
Yeah, so we did start our first SD-WAN deployment in 2017. So that was definitely very, very early. And we've been learning lessons along the way. What we're focused on this time and with EdgeConnect, I'll give a couple of things. First, we wanted to finally eliminate MPLS networks. So our current transport mix is business class cable, broadband, and LTE, 4G, or 5G where we can get it. And so that was our first requirement. Secondly, we really wanted to increase the level of security that we can do on the edge in our retail locations. So we are doing network segmentation at the edge, and we are using ClearPass for network access control for admission to those different security zones. The last thing really is we wanted a network that was easy to use. And so that was both for our engineers who may prefer GUIs or command lines or point and click. But more importantly, we really wanted it to be easy and born automated. And so what we're doing right now is we're moving across 1,100 branches in the United States inside of 6 months and upgrading the WAN, upgrading the hardware, and kind of moving through that. And so our automation work has taken us from average deployment times in a single office location from like 4 hours to something like 40 minutes. And so we are doing somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 branches a night, several days a week. And we work very closely with our business to make sure that we're not moving in important business time. So it's not 7 days a week, but it's several days a week. So yes, so that's kind of that's our SD-WAN deployment.
And then you mentioned LTE and 4G.
Yeah.
Is that like a main connection or a backup connection?
So in our previous iterations, they had pretty much been backups.
Yeah.
We are trying to leverage that as more of an active path.
Okay.
Frankly, that's less of a technology question and more of a billing question, right? So if we're depending what kind of contracts that we have on the minutes and the rates. The other thing I would say, though, is that we really thought we were going to be in a 5G world. But once we got down to branch by branch by branch, we're just not having all the 5G access that we thought we would have. So we are using a mixture of whatever's available to us. Maybe the last point on that is that we actually also use dual SIM. So we're leveraging that so that we have failover capabilities there and some carrier resiliency.
Great. So you're one of the first financial customers to use Aruba Central, which we thank you for, by the way. What led you to select our platform, and how are you using? How's it going? If you can give people a flavor for that, that'd be good.
Yeah. So at TD, we've been on a pretty steady march toward public cloud and leveraging public cloud services where we could. I think the network team really didn't want to be left out of the fun, to be honest. And so in 2018, we had a refresh opportunity coming up, and we decided that for our retail networks, we would take Wi-Fi controllers into the cloud with Aruba Central. And so it has been very good. I mean, a lot of the things that you talked about just a few minutes ago, getting that feature velocity and our ability to adopt that more quickly is very, very important to us. But actually, equally as important, I no longer need to manage the hardware lifecycle, the software lifecycle of those controllers in my data centers anymore, and that's that is probably equally as important. I will say that we do use some on-prem controllers still. I mean, we have a mix of different. We have small branch locations that might go from 10 to 50 employees, and then we have a brand new office tower in downtown Toronto that is 40 stories and connected via dark fiber. So there is a little bit of a mix in there, but we are really loving Aruba Central.
Perfect. I'm glad you said that. So the theme of this session is networks of the future. What challenges do you anticipate facing in the future? And when it comes to networking, especially around AI?
Yeah, so it's a remarkable journey. I've been kind of doing this for about 25 years. I know, I don't look that old, but I've been.
Started when you were 4.
I've been there. And it usually, as we started, it was hosting applications in your data center, making them exposed either via the internet or via extranet connections, and it was very simple. As we have moved to cloud and as the complexity of our applications has just continued to expand, and I think that's just going to continue. So it's not atypical for us to see applications that are having pieces that are in our on-prem data centers, pieces that are in our public cloud hosted environments, and pieces that may be coming from SaaSes or other PaaSes. And so the network really is the connectivity point for all of that. So number one, I think the network engineer of the future is going to be challenged to not just think in terms of boxes and protocols and those type of things, but how do you really create efficient connectivity between those different types of environments? And so the other thing, is one part is connecting it. I think any network engineer in the room would probably know that the worst phone call that you get is like, my thing is running slow, right? It's good when it's broken, it's good when it's working, but running slow is the worst. And so telemetry between these environments where we may not even own both ends of the connection is really, really hard. And I think we're going to see a lot of advancement there in the future. Now, on the AI part, I will tell you that I went from kind of skeptic to fan within the last kind of 6 months, and we've been doing a lot of really interesting work that we have kind of set a press release on just recently on how we're enabling contact center agents to better service customers by using Gen AI as an assistive technology. I think that type of use case can be totally expanded into our operations teams. And so if you think about, we have drawn network diagrams and design documents and all of these type of things that we used when we rolled something out, and then 3 years later when it breaks, we're trying to figure out how this thing works again. And so that's tremendously powerful if we're able to use an AI model to search that data. I will say that the skeptic is still there a little bit in that that data needs to be able to be searchable, and so I do think that there's probably a period of time here where we're going to be looking at kind of modifying our design documents in order to be consumed. So I will say that. The other thing though, I think that data center networks in the last 5 years have been rather dull. Right? I mean, it's, you've had the speeds and feeds you needed. It was very hard to not have a performant network. I think, there was a lot of kind of SDN solutions that were making things a little bit more interesting. But for the most part, it's been pretty steady state. As we look at Gen AI and really, distributed huge compute systems that are very different than kind of grid computing systems that we had in the past, the nerd in me is saying, oh yes, let's do some performance engineering. Let's get in here. Let's talk about PCI. Let's talk about like all these kind of things that are going to make this work together and kind of make this work. So I think that's going to be tremendous. If we can figure out how to power it, I think it'll be a really fun time in networks over the next couple of years.
Oh, that's great. Well, look, hopefully that was a story that resonated with many of the people in the room. And thank you very much for being a customer, and thanks for coming on stage. So a big round of applause for Neil.
Thank you.
Good, Neil. So as you heard from Neil, stable and secure networks are crucial for financial industry customers, but it's more than just the finance industry. If you think about it, you've got more data giving you more value, but also more threat. And a recent ISG study suggests that 75% of enterprise leaders identified network security as a top 5 infrastructure investment priority for 2024. Network security is more important than ever, and particularly with Gen AI and evolving threats. And that's prompting security teams to rely on a new tool in the network, which is Zero Trust. So in a Zero Trust environment, you start with the premise of trusting nothing, and then you build permissions as you go. And then when you add this approach with SWG, which is obviously protecting employees from the internet, and then you add with CASB, which is protecting companies' data by controlling which employees can see what, you bring all of that capability into a SASE solution, and then we can add our ClearPass capability as well to give Aruba a unique position. So within Aruba, we believe that we've always been great at protecting things on the network, and our acquisition of Axis Security gave us the ability to protect people on the network. And actually, in the last year, since we bought Axis, we've added over 300 new companies onto that platform. So just in kind of winding up the presentation today, as I said earlier, I believe that we are in the change business. And AI is the next big change, and it is here and now. And in order to harness the data that you need for AI, you've got to have ubiquitous network coverage. And I believe new technologies like private 5G and what we talked today around Wi-Fi 7 are key to getting data into these models. Security is also key in this AI world, and I believe that we're the only network vendor that can help customers deploy AI networks securely from edge to cloud. And in the spirit of kind of drinking our own champagne, we've infused AI within Aruba Central. So I encourage you, after you leave the presentation today, to check out the Discover Showcase outside, where we're showing Wi-Fi 7, private 5G, and also Aruba Central. And if you're interested as well, tomorrow on this stage at 9 o'clock in the morning, we have a more technical keynote session led by David Hughes, who's our Chief Product Officer, with John Green, who is our Chief Technology Officer. So just like to wrap up to thank you all for attending the session today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoy the next few days here in Las Vegas. Thank you very much.